What's good, everybody? We're back, and today we've got an all-new review of All-American for you guys. And in this one, we'll be breaking down the most recent episode of All-American, which was episode 11. And of course, in case you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out for free in the CW app. But anyways, as always, before I hop into my reaction and breakdown from this most recent episode, you guys are more than welcome to comment your thoughts on this episode and whether or not you liked what you saw, and everything, basically your take on it. So without any further ado, let's hop into this video because there's definitely some things we've got to cover, and I'm excited to get into it. So here we go. For starters, I decided that for this review, I'll just be going over each topic we witnessed and breaking it down instead of just going straight through the episode with you guys. So just bear with me, and here we go. So first we'll be breaking down the impact of policing on the black community and how the talk of justice played a role in this episode. So first of all, I would just like to say that the timing of this episode couldn't have come at a better time. We just had the George Floyd verdict, and we've seen multiple police shootings of blacks during and after the Derek Chauvin trial. So again, this couldn't have come at a better time, in my opinion. But so in terms of this episode, as we could have imagined, we saw Olivia do a good amount of work on this topic in this episode. And for me, this is good to see because she's starting to realize what her passion was during her sobriety, and now she's starting to get back into that while trying to recover. So it's kind of nice to see, especially because we haven't really seen her get into this, mostly because I feel like this season has mostly focused on her addiction and her relationship with Spencer and everything. But for me, in terms of this episode, it was natural that Olivia felt a connection with Tamika in this episode, since they had both encountered similar scenarios wherein they're both young black women who had encounters with police. And of course, only Olivia was able to get off scot-free, in large part due to being the white district attorney's daughter. But Tamika ended up being shot and killed. But one thing I would kind of like to talk about is the fact that Nurse Joy cautioned Olivia when they were having coffee about throwing herself into someone else's problems to ignore her own, which of course is something we've come to see a lot of from Olivia. And I think even though Olivia meant well with her efforts on Tamika's behalf, that's exactly what she was doing, so it's definitely a lot to process. But let me know what you guys think about everything we talked about there, and I'll try my best to get back to you. And of course, that's not to dismiss Olivia's reaction. She was feeling guilty that she got a ride home while Tamika ended up dead, but it's definitely something that you feel like she's just pouring her heart into to forget her own problems. But let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear. And also, we know that Olivia has always used her podcast to address social justice issues, and this most definitely qualified. But her decision, I think, to release that body cam footage, while it was admirable, but it was simplistic, I feel like. And as Laura mentioned, such situations like this can get complicated. So I think Olivia's choice is certain to have implications in Laura's position as the DA. And I don't think Olivia had a lot of thought about that, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. Could this compromise Laura's position as the DA? It's definitely going to be interesting. And if something like that were to happen, what could we see happen with Olivia, if it is revealed that she was the one who released the footage? So it's definitely going to be interesting, that's for sure. So that's about all I've got for that. But again, just let me know what you guys thought about the whole, social justice movement in this episode, and if it was what you hoped it would be. So, all right, moving on now. Coop, to things with Coop. She shined with her rap at Tamika's vigil, and I personally think that Layla should have been recording that for her album. But of course, Layla seemed really distracted throughout the beginning part of this episode, and she was unable to help Coop study for her GED. And it's hard to blame her after she learned of Olivia's relapse. I think it was understandable when Layla was upset with Liv for stealing Spencer from her. Although she was likely more upset with Spencer when you think about it. But anyways, Layla, she was so busy wallowing in self-pity that she missed the significance of Olivia returning the Wonder Woman pin. And, we did see her try to remedy that mistake by returning the pin to Liv, even if it seemed like at the moment Liv was too involved in her Justice for Tamika campaign to really notice that. But, hopefully in terms of Layla, she can kind of shake off her funk and return to being that kind of dynamic and confident character that she has been since completing rehab, So, now moving back to Coop trying to study in order to receive her GED, we saw her make a really smart move, in my opinion, by hiring Preach to be her new tutor. And I think this is a really good move because I think she's going to need him by her side when Mo reveals what she's really up to, And of course, in terms of this episode, we didn't really see anything from Mo in terms of getting revenge, but we mostly just saw her as a concerned community activist in this one. So let me know what you guys think about Coop hiring Preach as her tutor. And do you think we'll see Mo act on what seems to be a plan for revenge somewhat soon? I know it'll definitely be something to watch once we get into it. And, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with both Coop and Preach, once we get to that point. And it's definitely going to be interesting. And also, feel free to let me know what you guys think about the whole Layla situation. Hopefully she can get back to being that confident character that we've seen for most of this season. And, we'll kind of get back to that at some other point. But for now, let's move on to the next part of this episode. In other news from this recent episode, recruiting was definitely a big part of it. We saw Billy's old South Crenshaw teammate, Coach Barnum, who was scouting Spencer for TNT. His visit turned out to be educational, I would say, for both Spencer and Billy, to say the least. Spencer learned that his desirability for recruitment wasn't just about his abilities on the field. It had to be a story that could be sold on social media. And, the thing for me is that Barnum decided that Spencer being shot by a gangbanger might indicate that he was a bad boy, or something like that, and could be marketed as that. But, which, of course, I didn't really like that whole part. The thing about this situation for me in terms of Spencer is that he was getting worried because Barnum had been the only college coach to show up to recruit him, and he's conflicted about taking the scholarship even if he had to pose as someone he wasn't, and obviously the thing for me is that I wouldn't want to see Spencer have to take this offer simply because the recruiter thought he was someone that he really wasn't, and I think that if he were to commit that way, then that could definitely affect where the show goes moving forward. But, then later on, we see Coop decide to do him a solid, even though they're still kind of in a weird place, in their friendship, by reminding him of who he was with a video of a young Spencer. And that reminder kind of enabled him to stand up to Barnum and tell him to take him as he is or not, showing that he wasn't really willing to fool around or play any games. So, and the thing about the video for me is that it shows that Coop is definitely kind of softening on Spencer. And another thing to keep an eye on will be how much longer before Layla decides to warm up to him. It's definitely kind of interesting, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. And, the thing about this for me is that, Spencer is a genuinely likable guy. And, his biggest liability has kind of been carrying too much for those around him and not taking enough care of himself, So why wouldn't they want a friend like that, But I guess we'll just have to wait and see and hope for the best because, this would definitely be a step in the right direction in terms of Spencer's happiness. And, obviously I've kind of said this a lot, but, his happiness is kind of crucial to the show's success and, where it goes moving forward, So just let me know what you guys think. Will he commit to this school, now that he's kind of made it clear to the coach that he's not going to pretend to be someone that he's not, or could we see him go somewhere else? It's definitely going to be something to watch out for in terms of future seasons, so. All right, moving on now. Next we saw, Billy, he's discovering that recruiting has become, I should say, a lot more complicated than it used to be, and largely in part to social media. And his talk with Coach Barnum was kind of what compelled him to create a class in financial literacy for his players. And the thing about these lessons is that they should pay off for, the bulk of the team that don't play collegiately. I'm definitely on board with this idea, and I'm hoping that this helps out his players over the long run in terms of either playing at the next level or, just succeeding in life in general. Let me know what you guys think, though. I'm definitely interested in hearing. Do you like this idea of starting that financial literacy class? And, hopefully it can help the players, like I said, either whether they play at the next level in football or, just to succeed in life in general, so it'll definitely be interesting, for sure. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about is definitely really interesting in terms of Billy and Principal Carter's past, and this was because we see Coach Barnum reminding Billy of the day he beat up Carter, which seems to have totally slipped Billy's mind, and this is definitely interesting because it seems like there's a very real possibility that Billy is suffering from some sort of memory problem. And, the thing for me is that I'm still not 100% sure about who I believe is right in terms of what they recall about the past, Billy or Principal Carter. But the thing about this conversation makes me think that it may have been Billy who did all those things back in high school, considering the fact that someone else does recall it, But I think if it turns out that Billy was responsible for everything that went down with Principal Carter in high school, then I'm curious to see just how the writers go about this, because, I don't know if flashbacks really help, but just let me know what you guys think about all that we mentioned there. Do you think Billy or Principal Carter is telling the truth about what happened? And depending on who it is, what may be next for the other, So I think if it turns out that Principal Carter is the one that's remembering it wrong, which I don't think there's a very great possibility of that, but just in case, then we could see Principal Carter require therapy or something like that, but something like that. But again, just let me know what you guys think. It's definitely really interesting. And again, this conversation kind of makes me think that it might be Billy who did all that back in high school, and he's just remembering it wrong. He has some sort of memory problem, and it'll definitely be interesting if that is the case. So all right, kind of moving on now. We're sticking with things regarding Principal Carter, and as we know, Carter was finally kind of humanized, I would say, in this episode, if you will. It was revealed that he's more than just a bureaucrat with an axe to grind, in a way. Of course, he still is all those things, but it reveals that he's also a widower that's kind of in over his head as a father to a teen daughter, and for me, it was helpful to see him as a more well-rounded character because, to this point, I think all he's been about is making things difficult for the football team and having feuds with Billy, But anyways, we saw he and Grace actually get along for the better part of a day, and which, of course, circles the rumors of whether or not we'll see anything develop between the two. And, to be honest with all of you, I'm not entirely sure whether or not we could see something develop, but if they do, I think it would definitely make things interesting in terms of what might be ahead for Crenshaw, either becoming a magnet school or, holding it off, So just let me know what you guys think, though. But going back to the reason as to why I'm not sure if I see anything developing between Grace and Principal Carter is because, after all, he is grieving from his wife's death, and although it was like over a year ago, as he mentioned, I'm not sure if he's in a position to be getting into anything, but that's just me. Let me know what you guys think, though. It would definitely be interesting if the two do develop a relationship. So, it would definitely make things really interesting in terms of Grace's and Principal Carter's lives, if they do get together. So, all right, moving on now to kind of the last thing we have to go over here today in terms of things around the Baker house. And first of all, I would just like to say that for starters, it's hard not to feel bad for Laura, considering the fact that she's currently saddled with a recovering addict and, a social justice activist, and with a sidelined football player that's now in a funk. And, that leads us to things with Jordan. For the most part, at the beginning of this episode, we saw him feeling sorry for himself, and not just because his football career might be over, but also because his marriage may soon be as well. And, all in all, it seems like in the aftermath of their marriage getting leaked, it seems like Laura is definitely leaning to having their marriage annulled. And, of course, this is definitely something that I don't really want to see happen. I like what Jordan and Simone have, but at this point, I'm wishing it wouldn't have came out, but who knows? Maybe something changes, or, we could see Jordan and Simone stay together if their marriage does get annulled. But, I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. But as for the football side of things, we saw him snap at Asher and JJ when they were trying to help him out, but he eventually came around, and I think one thing to consider is that he's still going to be around for the football team despite the fact that he obviously can't play, so kind of like we saw with Asher at the beginning of the season, he'll help him out and continue to be an important part of the team, which is, important. And I think even although he's not playing, just being there could prove his value and help him at the next level, possibly. So it'll definitely be interesting, and I'm curious to see how he decides to go about things, so. And, of course, another thing to consider is, how are Beverly's chances now that JJ is going to be QB1? It's definitely interesting, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So, okay, and with that thought, I think we've once again reached the point in this episode where I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, feel free to just go for it in terms of anything we talked about here today. Let's just keep it civil as always, so. Also, if you think there's anything I may have missed, feel free to let me know, and I may make another video for it. Or if there's just anything in general that you may want to see from me, feel free to let me know. And I'm always interested in hearing what you guys might want to see, So with that thought, feel free to like and share this video, and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. I'd really appreciate it. Anybody that enjoys All-American will enjoy this channel, I can guarantee it. So, let your friends know, let your family know, and let's keep this squad rolling, So, also, be sure to check out my Instagram page. The link is in the description. I usually try to update you guys whenever we'll have a new video dropping, as well as if we may experience any delays or cancellations, or anything of that sort. So, again, feel free to check that out. And with that thought, I hope you all enjoyed this video. And until next time, this has been Austin Bielik of All Day All-American, which, by the way, that is my Instagram username. Just it's all with an underscore, then day underscore, all another underscore, and then American. So, anyways, bringing you All-American videos daily while the series is on hiatus once again. Not as long this time, though. Just this one's a 3-week break. Last time it was more like a month. But, we'll get there together. Don't worry, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.